So now we're going to get into full circle forestry from seedling to solution, Binderholz's zero waste wood innovation. And for this presentation, we have the Chief Sales Officer of Binderholz Timber, Thomas Mende. He was born and raised in Wiesbaden, Germany, and became a U.S. citizen in 1994. He has a bachelor's in business from Coastal Carolina University and an MBA from the University of South Carolina. And Binderholz is Europe's largest lumber company and worldwide leader in mass timber products. Mr. Mende has also traveled to 89 countries and conducted business in over half of those countries. So he brings a unique global perspective to forestry, wood products, and construction topics. So we'll turn it over to you, Thomas. Thank you.
I'm not sure. Oh, we checked it. Okay, it works. Great. Well, I appreciate that we have some leftovers from the. I was really shocked how many people were in the group before. So this is forestry, it's not agriculture, or is forestry agriculture? This is the big question. I view most of the forestry, particularly in the south, very similar to agriculture. It's just a longer time horizon. So what do we mean when we say zero waste? Let's start first a little bit about what Binderholz does. So through acquisitions, we grew into the largest European lumber company and about number 5 in the world. And again, through some of these acquisitions, we ended up, by coincidence or not, in almost a beautiful vertical line. So we bought, about a few years ago, 2 years ago, the BSW Group in England. They operate nurseries with about 60 million trees a year. That's more than our entire group uses every year. And we were already in forest management, so we have a number of forest management operations. We produce the lumber, we produce other products along the construction side. And then we're also going to, we're also the leaders really in using the non-lumber products. Some people call them byproducts, some people call them waste products. We call them non-lumber products. And we turn them into a couple of different unique products that I'll show you about, and then I'll be speaking a little bit about some new things that I still have on my horizon that I think could really change the game, particularly as we talk about carbon sequestration. So zero waste principle, I don't think we're necessarily unique in the lumber business when it comes to zero waste. Most sawmill companies will do something with their products, but most of them will just sell it away and hope that somebody takes care of things. So when we take a log, we can pretty much assume that about 40% of the log that we receive into our sawmill will not turn into lumber. So 40% of the whole footage. If you think about it, we cut in some of our mills 1.6 million cubic meters. In this case, it's close to tons of logs or trees, and 40% of that does not turn into lumber. The rest turns into these non-lumber products. So in general, it becomes a totally different game. So we try to go from beginning to the end. Of course, this is some pictures of our nursery operation in the UK. So the sad part about this is, and you know, if you know that trees grow, they grow quite fast. Last year we were only able to sell about 50 million of these seedlings. So 10 million in capacity was unused. And I really think this is a very sad statement to society that we were unable to plant an additional 10 million trees that would have been available to be planted had somebody really put their mind to it. And of course, we can't ship these trees to the United States, but Scotland and England are actively trying to promote growing more forests. There's, of course, a lot of planted, a lot of forest that was cut down during the Industrial Revolution. There's a lot of land available to grow new forests. So the capacity to add to new forest exists, and I think this is a very important thing to always remember. There's no shortage of land, there's only shortage of willingness to invest in the land and to grow more trees. So if we call this the beginning of our chain, and then in terms of the lumber side, the end is really a building. So Binderholz is the largest manufacturer of what we call mass timber solutions. So this is not lumber, it's lumber that's been processed into large panels or large beams and is used to build tall buildings. Now, what you see here is not a tall building, but it still used the same technology. In the US now, we're at about 18 stories. This is our tallest building up in Madison, Wisconsin. It was not our wood, unfortunately. But we have a project in Tanzania. This will go up to 28 stories. And I think there's a Chicago project now in the books as well. It will go into the 30 stories made out of these solid wood panels. The reason why I'm showing you in this part of the discussion this particular project is because this project was designed and built to be completely dismantled. So it was built already with the idea that one day I can take this building back apart and I can move it without any loss of fiber. So this is, in a way, this is recycling. It's an office building in Belgium that was specifically designed and built by the operator and owner to say, hey, there is an end use of a building, and at the end use, I should be able to do something else with the building or rebuild it in a different place. And I think this is a unique concept that we have to always keep in mind when we talk about the construction side of this business. So you can just see a couple cute pictures of this operation. That's what we generally talk about when we talk a mass timber building. So then our recycling, though, goes also into some other areas. You probably have perceived that wood might end up in packaging. In this case, this is what we call a pallet. And I always have a problem with the two words that are both pallet and pellet, the one with the A and one with the E. That's part of my pronunciation issue. So in this case, we bought a large pallet producer and also recycler in the UK. So we recycle our own pallets that we have made in the past, again, in an attempt to close the loop in bringing the business back. So then we have the three categories of non-lumber products, and let's just call them biomass for now, because in reality it's biomass and it has suitable uses. What you see here is bark. Bark, of course, ends up most of the time in landscaping operation. I would say this is a very traditional market that's established. I don't think there's a whole lot of new innovation in the bark segment. It's something that we're not personally in, but of course we have customers that sell that. But traditionally, and I think this is where I wanted to go with the comment of biomass, people take biomass and burn it. Yeah? So let's keep in mind that biomass burning, regardless of what ends up with it, in the end releases CO2. And this is, in a way, forestries and sawmillings, I'm going to call it the Achilles heel, because if I end up taking 40% of my product and it ends up releasing carbon dioxide again, it doesn't really help sequester the carbon dioxide going in the future. The largest item that we produce as a non-lumber products is chips. You're familiar with wood chips. This is the little bit larger, thicker piece. It generally ends up in 2 or 3 different operations. In the past, it was the pulp industry that took the majority of it. So pulp and paper. The biggest challenge we have in our country, in the United States, I don't think there's been a new pulp mill built since the 1950s. And instead, what's happening is pulp mills are closing and closing and closing. And no matter what state you are in the United States, every state is struggling with closing pulp mills. This is an environmental regulation issue. It has to do with mostly with the water situation, but then also with markets and competition, of course, from other countries. So we're a net importer of pulp. Maybe pulp should get a tariff, who knows? But our pulp and paper industry has struggled for years. It got a big boost through the Chinese diaper boom, and a lot of pulp and paper companies invented themselves into pulp, into fluff pulp manufacturers, but that has now ceased, and the closures continue. So this is why this topic of biomass and zero waste really occupies my mind, because as we want to now expand in our country, our lumber production, and if you follow, the president has stated he wants to reopen the national forests for thinning and higher production of lumber in the United States. This problem that we're talking about now is going to be the biggest problem. What to do with all the biomass that's generated in the process of making lumber. There's this beautiful product, and this is kind of when we start to get a little bit into the agricultural side of pine shavings. So this is a product that comes after the lumber is dried, and now we make it nice and smooth with a big knife that runs at incredible high speeds and just takes off just a little bit of that wood fiber, creates this nice fluffy thing. So that's very much a product that ends up in the agricultural scene. It ends up with in this case, you see some chicken product, but chicken farms use it in quite a large amounts, and horse farms really like it as well, but horse farms also use sawdust. This is a great product from an agricultural point of view because you can use it afterwards, after the chicken is, let's call it, done with it, and you can actually turn it into fertilizer. There's only very few people that are doing it currently. We have a co-location facility in our Live Oak, Florida sawmill, and they don't smell real good, so we have to live with the smell. But I think it's very ingenious to take the product after it's been used in the agriculture cycle, in the animal side, and to turn it into something that can be used again as fertilizer. And as fertilizer, bound by carbon, which then has very similar effect to what I think you were just talking about, which is this whole biochar effect. So this is the kind of circular thing that we should be looking at more. On the sawdust side, actually there's a company in Florida that buys sawdust from us, and they do something very similar. The sawdust is taken to horse farms in Ocala, and then they have an ingenious business model because they sell the sawdust to the horse farm, and afterwards they charge the horse farm to pick it back up, and then they sell it again. So they have 3 revenue streams out of this one transaction. And of course, when they sell it again back to agricultural actual farms for fertilizer. But this, unfortunately, is where our industry has been heading, which is to say, okay, let's make biofuels out of it. And if you're a little bit familiar with it, you know, the really sad part is we don't use this biofuel ourselves. No, we ship it to a port somewhere in the Gulf or on the East Coast, and then it goes on a boat, and it goes to England, and it gets unloaded onto a truck, and then it gets burned in a former coal plant in the middle of the UK. Or in, I think there's another plant in the Netherlands. There's this huge infrastructure that's been built just to burn the wood 4,000 miles away and release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Now the argument on the environmental side is, sorry, my wife is calling.
Are you sure you shouldn't answer?
Yeah, I should probably. So the environmental thing is that this is a fresh carbon in a way. So we're not burning fossil fuels. We're burning something fresh that regrows. And for us at Binderholz, it's really quite a good business. We also do it. We produce it in Europe. We sell it in Italy. It's part of the environment. But Thomas Mende, as he stands here, I still think this is pretty sad. You know, in the end, we should try to figure out a way to take this carbon and sequester it without adding energy to it or without releasing some things. So pellets can also, again, be used in the horse side, in the agricultural side. Here's a little bit of something different. So when you remember the pallet with the A, so the pallet with the A, he also has a pallet block, usually at the end. So we can compress sawdust using force, but energy, and a little bit of glue into new building products. So this is not it's not a new product, this block, but we're quite large in producing them. But one thing that we did, I think we're the only producer I think there's 3 producers in the world. So we bought an automotive body stamp, and we're stamping the actual pellet out of sawdust. So this is an excellent product. It's super dry, so it has agricultural state, agricultural grade pellet. It's usually a one-way pellet that can be used for pharmaceuticals, for anything agricultural, and so on. So that's Binderholz's universe today. And now I want to talk about something that's not new, but something that I think makes a ton or more sense, no pun intended, lots of tons available here, in what to do with biomass. So I would say in about 5-6 years ago, I was in charge of selling these byproducts. I've always sold just lumber, and then I was in charge of selling these. And I started thinking, why do I not have a way of using the product without having to add energy to it? Because if I start using it again, add energy, I create carbon again. So why go through the process of drying? Why burning it, creating carbon dioxide, when I can maybe use it otherwise? So I really found just 2 methods. And I've been helping the patent holder for about 5 years to try to get some traction. And sadly enough, we don't seem to be going anywhere. Maybe it's too simple. Maybe the companies are too old changed. But I can take the sawdust, I can add some clay, water, and make it into what looks like this. Doesn't look very appetizing. But when I do this, I basically accelerate a petrification force. So you've seen petrified wood. It's all over the place in some of our beautiful national parks. And then I can just mix it into concrete. So it takes out all the issues that people might have thought. And what you see here are pictures of the product in application. It's virtually indistinguishable from any other concrete stone product, with the big differential that it can be sawn, it can be drilled with normal woodworking tools. It's about 40% lighter than stone and concrete. But what you're looking at is product that has been in use for 20 years. So it's a very simple method, not a whole lot to it, but it also has really high fire resistance. And you can see this, I don't know if this is a video. Here's my friend Joshua. He's the inventor, the patent holder. Originally, by the way, this came out of Australia. The Australians had this at first, and Joshua grew up in Australia with the patent holder. There we go. So he's gonna take the burner and going straight at it. So it has the great thermal ability to withstand extreme heat without any issues. We used it in one of the previous pictures I showed you. It was used in a, what do you call this, zero emission homes? What was that called? It's a fancy term. They're like super low energy and passive house. Thank you, exactly. Thank you very much. So it's a passive house. It has extreme great insulation thanks to the wood fiber that's in there. So Joshua also figured out a way of how to put it in so it can be sprayed into a siding product and can be made really in a fireproofed. So if you know anybody that's in the concrete business that makes product, people like Oldcastle, CRH, we've approached them on this topic. It's really strange that companies that are actually Oldcastle is in the wood business, they do make mulch products and so on, that they really have not picked up on this. So this is a very quick way of sequestering carbon. If you can imagine how many concrete products we use every year in the United States, it could absorb a tremendous amount of carbon and lock it up without having to add any energy to it. It's a really, really simple process. So this is something I would like to see to go forward. I don't have a slide on it, but on the agricultural side, I do think there's a lot more potential in what these other guys are doing in terms of animal byproducts that we all have big issues with, whether or not that's pig manure. I know we have huge issues with pig manure, in particular in North Carolina and in big pig areas and wood. And then there's still one technology out there that apparently was on a really good track, and that's supercritical water gasification. Again, this is not a big energy input. Whatever General Atomics actually has developed and has a machine that can do this with wood fiber. But they abandoned, after government funding ran out, they abandoned it and now just sell this product for waste destruction. So again, they're looking for some government help to get the process back going. I've been working with them for the last 4 or 5 years. We're looking for grants that can get them back on how do I use this biomass and turn it directly into hydrogen as opposed to burning it and creating lots of CO2. That's all I had for you today. I don't know if you have any questions or suggestions, but it's an interesting topic, I think.